Caring for Kids God's Way, a biblical counseling certificate program in child advocacy developed by the American Association of Christian Counselors through Light University. Your ministry is to be a Galatians 6:2 helper. Ours is to equip you with the highest level of advanced training from the world's leading Christian counselors. 24 experts teaming up to create the most comprehensive child studies curriculum for the personal classroom. May the Lord bless your study as you begin caring for kids God's way. Internet safety expert. She's testified before Congress 4 times. Author of Kids Online, Protecting Your Children in Cyberspace. Caring for Kids God's Way presents Donna Rice Hughes, helping kids be safe on the internet.
Thank you all so much for being here today. I'm so glad that you could come. First of all, I want to just start us off with a very simple question. How many of you have kids who are more internet savvy than you are, or grandkids? Okay, that's typically the case, and that makes it so much more difficult to protect our kids in an environment where they know a lot more about the internet than we do. So what we're going to do in our presentation, and you can follow along with me in your notes, we're going to go over the basic internet dangers. Internet Dangers 101. The 2 primary dangers that we're going to be discussing is internet pornography and internet predators. Now, I think that it's important for you to understand how the pornography industry operates online. Because if you can understand how they operate and that they're actually trolling for your kids, then when we get to the safety part of our presentation where you're going to be learning actual rules and tools to implement, it will make a lot more sense to you why we are instructing you to take certain steps to protect your kids. And secondly, we're going to talk about internet predators. You've probably heard a lot about that on the news with the Dateline stories and everything. And we're going to show you the tactics and the profile of internet predators and how they are anonymously looking for your children and just how vulnerable your kids are. And then we're also going to talk about some of the spiritual dynamics. First of all, this is a spiritual battle. Okay. Paul says to the Ephesians, put on the whole armor of God so that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the enemy. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against powers and principalities and so forth. Therefore stand firm. Now, when we look at the pornography industry and the predators and how they're operating online, let's just keep in mind what's behind that. Now, we're going to teach you practical solutions, but remember, it's first and foremost a spiritual battle, okay? Parents are the first line of defense in this battle, and the battle is for the hearts and the minds of our children. And God has entrusted us as parents, grandparents, and even caregivers that are here as the stewards of these children's innocence. So thank you for coming, and we're just going to begin with a word of prayer. If you'll bow with me. Dear Father in heaven, we thank you for this day. We thank you for this time, and I thank you for everyone that you have brought here. I ask you, Lord, to fill us with the knowledge of your will. I ask you to cover us, Lord, and to protect our own hearts and minds, and give us the wisdom and the discernment that we need to protect these dear children. And Lord, I ask that you would just help me to get out of the way so that your word and your truth can come through this presentation. And we thank you, Jesus, that you are sovereign over the universe. In the name of Christ, amen. Okay. All right. Pornea is nothing new. Pornea is as old as the Old Testament. Pornography comes from the Greek root word meaning any sexual sin. So that pornography is literally the graphic depiction of sexual immorality. Now, with respect to pornography, kids have free and easy access to all kinds of pornography on the internet. Okay? when they have unrestricted internet access. That means if you don't have a filter in place, they have free and easy access. We're going to walk through that. Secondly, predators have easy and anonymous access to your children. They can actually come into your home and interact with your kids right under your nose, and you may not know about it. A little bit on the Porn 101. I think it's important for me just to very quickly let you know what type of pornography we're talking about that is on the internet. There is child pornography. This is material that depicts an actual child. It is always illegal, federally, it's illegal to possess it, to distribute it, and to produce it. There is a tremendous amount of child porn on the internet that your kids have free and easy access to. Secondly, there is what the law calls obscenity. This material is typically the hardcore pornography, the XXX rated material. It is not legal for adults or for kids, obviously. However, in order for it to be prosecuted, it has to be brought before a judge and be deemed obscene. And this would also include the deviant kinds of material like bestiality, incest, rape, violent types of material fall under obscenity. However, if it's not prosecuted, it doesn't get taken down. And we've been in a real challenge the past 10 years where the pornographers have had such a head start on law enforcement that a tremendous amount of the porn on the internet is actually prosecutable as obscenity. Your kids have free and easy access to that. Lastly is harmful to minors material. This is what we typically think of when we think of pornography, because before the internet, this is the kind of material that you could find in an adult bookstore or an adult could buy at a convenience store. The Hustler magazine, the video. But it would be illegal for a minor child to get that porn. Now on the internet, Congress has 2 times tried to extend the laws that protect kids from harmful to minors pornography or soft core pornography. And the first time it was struck down by the Supreme Court. That was about 10 years ago. The second time was in 1998, and it's still being held up in court. So we currently have no protections to even guard our kids against the softcore material. So it's anything goes. And this is why you as parents have to be the first line of defense. You not only have to protect your children from inappropriate material, but from illegal material and from criminal activity, as you'll see with the predators. The porn industry is at least $12 billion. That is bigger than the combined revenues of ABC, NBC, and CBS. It's big bucks, okay? Remember what the word says, the love of money is the root of all evil. We can see that here as demonstrated by the porn industry. By the end of 2004, there were over 420 million pages of pornography on the World Wide Web. That's just on the web. Now remember, what kind of pornography are we talking about? This isn't just airbrushed nudity, Playboy kinds of pornography. This is hardcore material, bestiality, child pornography. In fact, child pornography has become a multi-billion-dollar commercial enterprise, and it is among one of the fastest growing businesses on the internet. So, how are kids able to access all this pornography? Well, obviously through the World Wide Web, through email, junk mail. Have any of you all been spammed? Spam? Yeah, okay. Instant messaging. You know what instant messaging is? All right. Chat rooms. Social networking sites. This is the new hip things that kids are so into. You've probably heard of them. They've been all over the news for the past year, and we're going to cover them a little bit later. Also, let me just make a point that with new technologies, even cell phones now and iPods, etc., and even online gaming, there are access points for the child to access pornography. So, they're always one step ahead of us, unfortunately. Now, this I think is really important to understand. A lot of parents that I've talked to over the years, they think, well, you know, if it's making all this money, how can kids get there without paying for it? I mean, how can they actually view the material? Well, the fact is that at least 74% of these pornographers on the World Wide Web have free pictures on their websites. And they do this in order to reel you in. They put up all these pictures. And then oftentimes, if you try to back out of that site because, you know, your conscience or whatever, it will just pull up another type of picture to try to get your attention and to grab your appetite. Okay? So they're very clever marketers. Only 3% of these website operators actually have age verification technologies in place. That was a law that was passed a number of years ago that I referred to, COPA, the Child Online Protection Act, and that's been held up at the Supreme Court for all these years. If it had gone into effect, this wouldn't be the case, but unfortunately it is, and therefore parents, we have to shoulder this burden ourselves. Kids can also accidentally come across pornography when they're doing word searches on the internet. You know, boys, for instance. Boys.com takes you to a very hardcore homosexual porn site. Typing in words like President Bush or Barbie can take you to a porn site. Because again, pornographers are thinking, how can I get people who would not ordinarily come to my site? And then can I reel them in with my free pictures and hook them, and then I'll get a credit card, then they'll become a consumer. All right? And they know if they can get these kids on board at an early age when their hormones are raging, where they don't have a lot of logic skills, you know, understanding reaping and sowing and that kind of thing, and it's certainly not the addiction process, that they could potentially have an ongoing client for life. So they are after your kids. Stealth sites. Stealth sites are sites that look like they're something, but they're really something else. Girls.com, as you can see on this next slide, is actually a porn site. Now, the material that's here wouldn't be considered pornographic by law, but if you were to click on any of these areas, Asian porn, free Asian porn, etc., you would be able to see free pictures of very graphic sexual material. Okay. Youth and internet porn. The adult industry themselves testified before a commission that at least 20 to 30% of all the traffic that visits their porn sites are kids. Recently, the Washington Post discovered that 11 million teens are regularly viewing pornography on the internet. This is a pornographer's dream come true. 9 in 10 kids, in a study that was actually done several years ago in 2002, said that 8 to 16-year-olds had viewed pornography mostly when they were doing their homework and had come across it innocently through these innocent ways that I just discussed with you. This is a new one from Canada. 87% of college students, they found, were actively engaging in some form of cybersex on the internet. And you can look at that in your handout. Now, I bring this next slide up to make a point. First of all, I think, especially in Christian circles, we have thought of pornography as being a man's problem, a man's issue. That is no longer the case. Now, women probably, 10, 15 years ago would not have gone into a XXX rated bookstore or would not have, gone up and picked up a porn magazine, et cetera, but now they also have easy access. In fact, today's Christian Woman polled their own readership, and they found that 1 in 6 women, including Christian women, were struggling with porn addictions. And in a book that just came out last year, 2005, 41% of the women polled said that they were currently engaged in using some type of pornography. Lastly, not to pick on pastors, but today's Christianity Today actually did a survey of leaders, of Christian leaders and pastors that were currently using the internet themselves. 51% of the pastors said that cyber porn was a possible temptation, 37% said that it was a current struggle. Now, I say that to make this point. So many Christian parents think that if their kids are good kids and they love God and they're in youth group and they're been baptized and they seem to be walking the straight and narrow, that they're not going to be lured in to this world, and nothing could be further from the truth. I love this quote, and I'm just going to read it to you. That came from a pastor, Bill Perkins, who I have no idea who he is, but the idea is that none of us are immune. We as adults aren't immune, our kids are not immune. If you think that you can't fall into sexual sin, then you're godlier than David, stronger than Samson, and wiser than Solomon. So is pornography just harmless fun? Many would like for us to think that. Groups like the ACLU, who have done a wonderful job making people believe that pornography is protected speech, is protected under the First Amendment. It is not. Child pornography is not protected under the First Amendment. Neither is obscenity, and neither is harmful to minors when it's given or made available to kids. That's the kind of pornography that is protected for adults, but not for kids. Actually, pornography is a counterfeit for love, intimacy, and commitment. And with children in particular, because of the vulnerability of their adolescent brain, it is particularly negative with respect to the impact that it has on their emotions and their mental health. And it's highly addictive. And because, I think you're covering this in another series on addiction, but it actually alters the brain chemistry of the brain. And once these images come into a child's mind and they actually consume this material, it's very hard for the images to be erased. It's a very difficult addiction, in other words, to break later on in life. So prevention's the key, right? Because what we see impacts the way we think and our choices and our behavior, you can only imagine that anyone, whether they're adults or children, that are consuming pornographic images that, for instance, if it's just hardcore pornography, that do not portray love and commitment, or violent pornography where someone is actually hurt or harmed, or bestiality or child pornography, which is the tool of the pedophile, that oftentimes we see that the pornography is not enough and people will begin to act out with a real person. And one of the trends that we've seen over the past few years, because kids have had a steady diet of all types of pornography on the internet, is that kids are beginning to act out more and more against younger kids. And in your notes, there is an actual study where we give you a statistic on that. Next, we're going to the second main danger, predators online. How many of you have seen the Dateline series? Pretty scary, right? It's opened a lot of people's eyes. This has been going on for years, since the internet, since actually before the internet became commercial. Predators were using the internet for all kinds of purposes, to trade child pornography, to talk about how to molest kids, how to avoid law enforcement. But as the internet has become more and more commercial, they've also had anonymous access to kids. You see, when a predator is online, children and even adults can't determine whether that person's a predator, because you can pretend to be anything or anybody you want. And kids are particularly vulnerable because we want them to be innocent, right? And not to just be suspicious of everyone. But this is an awkward situation, really, to help kids understand, to have the discernment that a lot of these folks out there aren't who they say they are and could be actually out to hurt them and to harm them. The predators online also have easy access to child pornography. This is also unprecedented. Prior to the internet, predators and pedophiles had to get child pornography through the black market, basically, because it was highly prosecuted through our mail service, and the prosecutors that work with our mail services. And now with the internet, again, all of this crime is just leaps and bounds ahead of law enforcement, and it's very hard to keep up with. In fact, approximately 20% of all internet pornography does involve children. And the predator also has his choice, his or her choice, of the kind of child porn that they would like. It's a la carte. Some like older, teens, some like younger teens, some like prepubescent kids, and now there is a trend for younger children, toddlers, and infants. And this is a huge trend, and I believe that the reason we're seeing this is just within the addiction breakdown, if you will, of the predator who is consumed by child pornography, that they go, to even more deviant, more graphic kinds of material. The profile of a pedophile. In some of the stings that we've seen, and you've certainly seen this in the Dateline series, you typically see this person as a middle-aged male profession, someone who could be living right next door to you. And by the way, you should check the sex registries in your area and be on top of those. They can be corporate executives. 25% have regular contact with kids, such as teachers, coaches, and priests. Well, that makes sense, right? If they like kids and they want to be around kids in order to build relationships with them, they'll often get into some type of vocation to where they have easy access to children and to gain their trust. There's another trend that came to my attention a number of years ago, as you can see in this next slide, and I think this is probably the scariest for me, and that is we're seeing juveniles themselves and young adults becoming the new breed of predator online. In fact, 48% of all the sexual solicitations of kids online, in a study a number of years ago by the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, found that almost half of the sexual solicitations were by juveniles. And of the adult solicitations, most were young people between the ages of 18 and 25. And I sincerely believe that the reason for this is because these kids have been brought up on the internet, they have had exposure to all of this pornography that we've talked about, they probably become hooked on it or addicted to it, and now they are in the acting out phase. Regardless of the kind of predator we're talking about, where kids play, predators prey. 1 in 5 kids received a sexual solicitation or approach in the last year when the study was done, and you can follow that in your notes. What is most interesting is that almost 90% of these solicitations occurred in chat rooms and instant messaging. Now we're going to cover why those are so important to limit for your children, to block chat rooms and limit who can instant message your child. Why? Because you cannot detect a disguised predator online. You as the parent can't, the child can't, and even if you're in a chat room by AOL, where they have human monitors looking at the screens and what's going on, they can't detect a disguised predator. You follow me? So in my opinion, the upside of having your kids in chat rooms is not worth the downside. There's really no good reason to have them in chat rooms. I think it's very interesting. When the Girl Scouts did a recent study, they found that 30% of the teenage Girl Scouts said that they had been sexually harassed in a chat room. Well, in my opinion, they shouldn't have been there in the first place, but they were. But only 7% told a parent. Why is that? Why do you think that is? Well, I believe it is because they're afraid that the parent would pull the plug from the computer, ban them from going online, just say it's not worth it, it's too much of a headache, et cetera, et cetera. And I just want to encourage parents not to do that, because the internet really is here to stay, and it's up to us while we've got these kids under our care to teach them how to be safe, and to put the proper boundaries around the use of the internet so that they can use the good parts of the internet, stay out of the dangerous areas, and enjoy the benefits that the internet has to offer. Okay? Because the internet isn't bad. It's just, you've got to be careful of the places where the predators are and understand how the pornographers work. Also, kids, I mentioned this earlier, they are ignorant, innocent, vulnerable, as they should be. 29% said they would freely give out their home number or their home address. Or actually, 29% said they would freely give out their home address, and 14% would give out their email address. It doesn't take much to ask a 10-year-old kid, where do you live? I go to the school next door. Have you been to the movie down at da-da-da-da-da-da? And kids can just get reeled right in. And predators, let me tell you something about predators. They like children. They really like children. They enjoy them. Now, I'm not just talking about sexually. They like kids. They're good at building relationships with vulnerable kids. They're great at it. And sometimes they will take up to a year to groom a child before they'll ever attempt make a sexual approach towards that child. Now sometimes, you can be in a chat room in 5 minutes. If I were to take you in a chat room and I said, hi, I'm Susie, I'm 10 years old and I love boys, I'd be hit on probably within 2 minutes. Okay. These are some new stats that came from the Polly Klaas Foundation. You might remember Polly Klaas. 1 in 8 kids discovered that they were actually communicating with somebody online that was an adult pretending to be younger than they actually were. And 1/3 of these youth actually talked about meeting someone that they had met on the internet. That is a big no-no. You don't know who that person is. Do not let your kids meet someone that they've met online. In fact, they really shouldn't be interacting with anybody that they've met online. If they don't know them in the physical world, again, we don't know who these people are. Very difficult to determine. And if you're starting to think, you know what, I thought I knew a lot about this, but I don't know as much as I thought I did, you're not alone. I'm not going to cover this particular slide, but I want you to understand that most parents just really don't know the extent of what their kids are actually doing online and how to protect them. Next, we're going to show you a video. This is a video that I ordinarily walk through in my own PowerPoint, but it's done so well in video form, I think it's going to be very interesting for you. And what we're going to do is, it's called Tracking Teresa, the name of the video. It's put together by the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. It's available on their website, by the way, and you can get to it from our site at enough.org. We're going to go into a chat room, all right? And we're going to show you how easy it is for a predator to track a young girl by the name of Teresa. In that chat room, track her wherever she goes on the internet, and within a very short amount of time, be able to get enough information from her, from little trails that she's left on the internet, in order to track her and find out where she lives. Okay? So let's take a look at the video.
How hard is it to target kids online? Let's conduct an experiment and see. We'll start by going online and selecting a harmless chat room. How about one created specifically for youth, like this one about music? Take a look at the list of people currently in the chat room. We'll pick one at random. How about Teresa01? Posing as a fellow chatter, we engage Teresa in a private conversation and ask her age. She shrewdly avoids giving us that information. Most online or internet service providers have user directories available to help their members identify others in the group with similar interests. Members can create and store profiles of themselves in the user directory for other members to view. While these directories can be useful, they can also make you vulnerable. We'll look for more information about Teresa by checking her member profile. We type her chat name and learn more. Good job, Teresa. She didn't list her age, location, gender, or post a picture of herself, but what does her name tell us? Is she male or female? If her brother's name is Billy Jr., what might her father's name be? If we click on the locate command, we can follow Teresa wherever she goes in cyberspace. We can also email or instant message her. After 2 minutes of searching, we have determined that Teresa is most likely a female teen. She likes basketball, music, and hanging out with friends. She has a little brother who most likely answers to Billy Jr. She has a valid email address and an instant messenger account, and we have accurate addresses for both. Another place to look for information is newsgroup postings. Since we have a valid email address for Teresa, we can use it to search through these postings. Now I know how many messages Teresa has posted, when and to what site she posted them, and the text of each message. In this posting, she has posted several personal identifiers. Can you find them? They are her telephone number, the time of day when she will most likely be home, her mother or sister's name, and her email address. Within 8 minutes, we know that her first name is Teresa. She appears to be in her teens. Her interests are basketball, music, and hanging out with friends. She has a younger brother named Billy Jr. She has valid email and instant messenger accounts. She has a mom or sister named Sue. We have a good idea of what time of day we could find her at home, and we know her home telephone number. How useful is her telephone number? Even if we only had her area code, we could use it to quickly get an idea of her geographic location. However, since we have her entire telephone number, let's use it to perform a reverse lookup and see what else we can find out about Teresa. The search yielded the last name of the person Teresa's telephone number is registered to. Most likely Teresa's last name as well. For those of you wondering about your own telephone numbers right now, there's good news. Most services will allow you to change or eliminate your personal data from their directories if you find it there. But you have to find the services that list your information before you can request that it be removed. As for Teresa, we now have her last name. Let's see what information we can get searching with it. We'll need another directory. How about the white pages? With every additional piece of information, we can perform more searches. We'll enter her last name and start our next search. I bet we can find out where she lives now that we have her name. There she is. Laurel. I'm not familiar with that town. Let's see if we can find more information. I'll look it up on a map search. One click and I'm there, but I think I'd like a closer look. And what if I want to find out how to get there? No problem. I can easily get directions online that will tell me step by step how to get from where I am to where Teresa lives. Now, what about schools? Where does Teresa go to school? That should be pretty easy to narrow down. So let's go to an online search engine and put in the details we have found that will be most useful to us. Laurel, school. Our search leads to local schools. We can read articles about events in which these schools have been involved. We have the street address for the schools, but most importantly, we can link to the school's websites. That will allow us to find even more detailed information about the school, such as class times, lunch schedules, and possibly pictures of students. It's been 20 minutes since we first identified Teresa in the chat room. Let's review what we've discovered about her in that short time. We know that she is a female teen. We know her full name is Teresa Doe. Her email address is teresa01@email. She likes basketball, music, and hanging out with friends. She has a brother named Billy. She collects or trades music. We know the full names of her mother, father, and brother. We know her home telephone number is 555-888-1212. We know she's probably home by 5:30 p.m. on weekdays. Her mom gets home from work by 5:30. She lives at 111 Liberty Road in Laurel, to which we were able to get specific directions. And finally, we know what schools are closest to her home. Hopefully, this will make you take a closer look at what you or your children are posting online.
Now you can see from that video just how easy it was for this predator to track Teresa. But he had to go to some extra work to track her, as the video showed you. We have a new thing, a new phenomena on the internet called social networking sites. This is a predator's dream come true. The predators no longer have to work like the predator did in tracking Teresa to get enough information to track a child. Because what a social networking site really is, it's a combination of blogs, blog, by the way, is short for weblog, chat rooms, instant messaging, email, profiles, and advertisements. All right? Chat rooms, IM, and profiles are all predator magnets. By themselves, you combine all this together and hey, you know, you've just made the predator's job very easy. It's very difficult to protect these kids from predators on these social networking sites. We're going to talk to you about how you can do it, but at Enough is Enough, we truly believe that under 17-year-old kids are safest if they're not on the social networking sites. Now that's going to be hard for some of you parents because it is the cool thing that all the kids want to do. It's the big trend in the summer of 2006. But some of the other concerns that we have that I wanted to share with you about social networking sites is that these kids are oftentimes using these sites as confessionals. They're putting diary information up there, very personal information about their life. They're giving out information about where they live, who they are, putting pictures of themselves, sometimes scantily clad, thinking that they're going to attract, a cute young Brad Pitt or something like that, not realizing that they're attracting, a predator as well, possibly. There's also hate speech, links to drugs, pornography, and links to hardcore pornography. Currently, most of these sites have an age limit of 14 years old. However, they do not implement age verification on these sites, which means that your 10-year-old could go in to one of these sites and type in that they're 14 or 15, and they would be on, and they would have access to the site and to all of the things that are there. I hope that with time that they're going to be making these sites a little more safer. In fact, we are working with a number of the lead social networking companies to try to clean the sites up. But currently, that's the case. Under 17, safest if they're not on these sites. I'm going to show you here in these next few slides some of the kinds of groups that gather, because when you go to a social networking site, different like-minded groups will gather together to network and have an online community. This one is the Cutters. The next is pro-marijuana. You see a lot about drugs and some violence on some of these sites. Not necessarily wholesome material. This next is just simply some advertisements. This is, by the way, is not porn under the law. However, there is pornography on a number of these sites and then links to much harder pornography. So just be aware, parents, if you're going to let your kids on one of these sites, go check it out yourself first. See if you think that this environment is something that the benefits would outweigh the risk. And if not, then I would suggest you restrict your kids. This next slide, I've threw up a few cases here just to show you how dangerous they can be. These are 3 instances where a young person was tracked down by, in the first one, a 37-year-old man just read her profile. She put up personal information on her profile. He was able to track her down after her school job, and she was attacked. Another 17-year-old college student was murdered by a man who found her info at one of these sites. And in another instance, a 33-year-old man was arrested for having sex with a 16-year-old boy he met on MySpace. This is very, very easy for these predators to come across these kids, and the kids are just so vulnerable because it's kind of like this, the new thing to do, and it really, there's a lot of peer pressure for the kids to be on these sites as well. Okay, all that said, we're getting down to the final wire, and what we're going to do is we're going to go over Internet Safety 101. I'm going to try to teach you what we have found over the years will help equip you to better protect your kids on the internet. In other words, don't pull the plug on the internet. You're going to pull the plug on some of the sections of the internet. But how can you teach your kids to be safe on the internet so that they learn the good side of the internet? It's going to be part of their life, forever. So you want to teach them safety at home. That's the best place, or at school. And then we're going to cover a few more points. Now, if you'll get out your rules and tools, you'll see rules and tools at the top, a guideline for parents, guardians, and educators. We're not going to go over all of these because we don't have enough time, but some of the very basics. Teach your children never to give out personal information ever under any circumstances should they give out personal information. to someone that they don't know. Okay? So if it's a profile, even though it's in their own private little site on a social networking site, a lot of people can see it that they don't know, oftentimes, okay? And what we've also done under these rules and tools, just to incentivize you, not that you're not incentivized already, but just in case, we have put some stories or statistics underneath each rule and tool to remind you of why this is important, why you're going to be taking the time and the effort to implement a given rule or tool. Online photos. In all the years I've been doing this, we always said no online photos. Now with social networking site, it's all about online photos. So if you're going to let your kids on these sites, be very careful about the kind of online photo you allow them to put up. I recommend they don't put up any. Put up a cartoon, you know. Even an innocent headshot with a school picture can attract a predator because he may like the cute blue-eyed blonde, you know. You see what I'm saying? So just be aware of that. Keep the computer in a public area of the house. This is very important. I'm sure you know this or you're already doing it. It just helps you to supervise what your kids are doing. It also helps you to interact with them, you know, what you want to do and build trust around the computer and everything else. Keep lines of communication open. Know your kids' online activities and friends. You've got to ask them, who's that? Who's this person? You know, if some of my friends' kids are into Xbox, you know, and they're playing games with people that they don't know. That can be potentially dangerous. Instruct your child never to plan a face-to-face meeting. Always disallow chat rooms. In my opinion, there is no good reason to have your child in a chat room. Okay? Limit instant messaging. The technology tools will actually allow you to select buddy list with your child so that people who are not approved in their buddy list can't contact the child. Now just remember, your child can change the buddy list when you leave the room, so you need to kind of check on that. And have online rules and an agreement with your child about their computer use inside your home and also at the neighbor's home, because there are other access points, remember. In your handouts, you will actually find a sample agreement, youth contract agreement that you can use. You can use it in its entirety or you can use it as a model to create your own. And we highly recommend that. As far as tools go, there are a lot of software tools available. We don't have time to go into them. We have a tremendous amount of information at enough.org to help you select what type of filtering and monitoring tools you should look for. I think the easiest are the server-based solutions. You always want to have filters on. There's no reason a child should be on the computer without an internet filter. Why? Remember accidental access? The filter can read all the innocent word searches and all the sites like boys.com that look like they're innocent. They know that, and they'll screen it out. Very important piece of software to have on your computers. Okay. Next, we just included, if you think that this will be useful, what we're calling our Parents Pledge, and really in a buddy list, just as something for you and your spouse or a friend to say, you know what, we are going to try to set some goals of when we want to have these safety rules and software tools in place in our home. And of course, this is up to you, but I just want to encourage you that every day you do not have the basic internet safety rules and tools in place, as every day the pornographer and the predator has potential access to your children. Okay, these next few slides are in your work text. We're not going to be able to cover them in any great detail, but if you're going to let your kids online at an early age, be sure to use what we call a whitelist, which is a group of pre-selected, pre-approved internet sites that are child-friendly, and that's the only place your child can go. So it's not really the internet, okay? It's a subset of the internet, and there are some services like that available. And you can also introduce your kids to computers just through computer games, which I think is the safest. Ages 8 to 11, if you're going to let them on the internet at this age, use the most restrictive filter. And again, all the other tips to help you along the way are in your notes. Ages 12 to 14, again, set the filters accordingly. You may want to give them a little more latitude, but you still want to have a filter on. And remember, ages 12 to 14, no social networking sites. And remember, your kids can actually lie about their age and get on these sites, so you really need to be aware of what's going on. Ages 15 to 18, stay on top of your teens. They're very vulnerable. I believe still that they're safest if they're not on the social networking sites. And really the very best thing you can do as a parent is to have open and honest communication with your kids. You know, you don't want them to be fearful to tell you what they're encountering on the internet and that you're going to freak out and pull the plug and everything else, okay? Because remember, even if they come across pornography or predator, it's oftentimes not their fault, right? Here's a list of some questions to get the ball rolling, to start conversations with your kids about what they're doing if you haven't done this already. Have you seen pictures on the internet that make you feel uncomfortable? Etc., etc. Has anyone ever asked you for personal information, and on and on. Some warning signs we've also included for you. Too much time online. Here's a telltale one. The computer screen changes when you walk in the room. Now that doesn't mean they're into dangerous areas, but they're up to something they don't want you to know about. So, and I also want to let you know that at Enough is Enough, we have a very extensive victims resource list. So it's there to help you. At Enough is Enough, we are working on a national effort, if you will, because we see the responsibility of protecting kids as a partnership between the public, which is the parent and the child giver, the technology industry, and the legal community, which is Congress and law enforcement, and then, of course, the faith-based community. So we're actively working on this issue with other groups. We have a lot of information to share with you at our site. One of the things that a number of years ago, I was praying about this issue, and we had made so many strides, really, and yet the problem was getting worse. And I asked the Lord, I said, what's going on? What's wrong? And he gave me this verse, and I wanted to share it with you. And it's 2 Chronicles 7:14. You probably know it. If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and will forgive their sin and heal their land. And I believe that it starts with us, with those who are Christ followers. And one of the things that I've seen in the church across America, and not necessarily every church, but that oftentimes, you know, we just don't give people permission who are struggling with sexual brokenness issues, addiction, homosexuality, promiscuity, adultery, whatever it is, to really have a safe place where they can come into the love of Christ through us. And I believe because of that many people stay in darkness and aren't healed. And a lot of us have room to repent on this. Either we are the sexually broken, or we're like, you remember the story of Jesus with a woman in John. She came to him in the act of adultery, drug in front of him. And there were the self-righteous that were ready to cast the first stone. You know, some of us may be ready to cast the first stone because we didn't have those problems. And look at, you know, how bad these people are or whatever it is, and get real judgmental. There's another group that may just be the complacent bystanders. You know, just don't care, just doesn't affect my life, et cetera, et cetera. If we're in any of those categories and not in the shoes of Jesus on this issue, I think we have room to repent. And I just want to encourage you to consider that and to pray about it, because I really believe that it starts with us. And if the church can come together on this issue and be a loving, safe place where people can get healed, then I believe we're going to see a lot more happen across the culture. And remember that Jesus himself said that the thief does not come except to kill, steal, and destroy, but I have come that they might have life and might have it more abundantly. And lastly, he said that He has come to heal the brokenhearted and to preach deliverance to the captives and recovery of sight to the blind and set at liberty them that are bruised. And the victory is in him. So thank you for being here. It's been my pleasure. I hope you've learned a lot. This is just the tip of the iceberg, but hopefully it will incentivize you to go to the next step. We have a lot of resources in your workbook and also on our website. Please come visit us. You can get updates, ask questions, and we're here to help you protect your children. Thank you.